Your birthday party, am I invited?
Yes. Yes, you're definitely invited. I invite you to all my parties. You just haven't seemed to show up.
No, well, is it on the East Coast?
Yes.
Well, that's why. Why don't you have one here on the West Coast? Because I work all the time.
Okay, well, maybe I have one at your house.
Where's that? I know about them.
Ellen,
Now,
were you surprised by the allegations about P. Diddy? Did that surprise you about P. Diddy? He's been on your show many times. Have you been to his parties?
I don't have any real personal beef with Diddy, but it's got to go down. The bits are there. I'm a gold miner. I just found some gold.
It started with a single comment that didn't accuse, didn't prove anything, but still made the internet stop and rewind. On his podcast, Joe Rogan questioned why certain names stayed quiet while others were dragged nonstop. He didn't name crimes. He didn't claim insider knowledge. He pointed to something more uncomfortable: silence. As allegations around Diddy dominated headlines, viewers noticed how familiar faces from old interviews were suddenly absent from the conversation. Clips resurfaced. Jokes aged badly. And people began asking why Ellen DeGeneres, once closely associated with those moments on camera, hadn't said a word. The silence raised questions, not answers. And once those questions were spoken out loud, the narrative shifted overnight. When the Diddy situation exploded online, the public response followed a familiar pattern. People didn't wait for verdicts.
all right, we're back to Sean Diddy Combs. Is it Diddy today? Because sometimes you're Puffy and sometimes you're Diddy. Or sometimes you're Daddy. What are you today?
I'm so confused today with it, as long as you say it in a nice way.
They didn't wait for statements. They went backwards. Old interviews. Old jokes. Old moments that once felt harmless suddenly felt loaded. Viewers noticed that humor changes meaning when context changes, and nowhere was that more apparent than in clips pulled from Ellen DeGeneres' daytime talk show. For years, Ellen's set was treated as one of the safest spaces in Hollywood. Guests laughed. Awkward stories became punchlines. Party talk was framed as playful banter. But as online speculation suggests, when the tone of the broader conversation shifted, those same moments started being reinterpreted through a darker lens. People began asking whether those jokes were just jokes, or whether they hinted at something people ignored at the time. The clips that resurfaced most often involved Diddy appearing relaxed, familiar, and joking openly about parties. Ellen played along, sometimes teasing, sometimes appearing knowingly amused.
You may have heard this summer there were allegations of a toxic work environment at our show, and then there was an investigation. I learned that things happened here that never should have happened. I take that very seriously, and I want to say I am so sorry to the people who were affected.
The show continued for a bit, then ended, with Ellen saying it just wasn't challenging anymore. But a lot of people read it differently, like the trust.
At the time, it was daytime television gold. Today, viewers replay those moments differently. Not as evidence, not as proof, but as optics. And optics matter when public trust erodes. Joe Rogan became the catalyst for this shift. Not because he accused Ellen of anything, but because he verbalized what many online had already been whispering. On his podcast, Rogan questioned why so many celebrities openly joked about Diddy's parties for years, then suddenly claimed ignorance when allegations surfaced. He framed it as a cultural question, not a legal one. How could so many people orbit the same spaces, talk about them publicly, and later insist they saw nothing unusual? That question landed hard, especially because Ellen's show was one of the main platforms where those party conversations played out on camera. Viewers noticed that Ellen wasn't just a passive listener in those interviews. She reacted. She laughed. She sometimes implied familiarity with the subject matter. Again, not wrongdoing, but recognition. And recognition changes how silence is perceived.
Now, what time would your party start, let's say?
Like 9:30.
Really, that early?
Yeah.
I could make that.
Yeah.
But I could think of you of starting a party at like midnight. Like, what time will it go till?
That's a different type of party. It'll go from like 9:30 to like maybe 3 o'clock, 3 o'clock. And then, we have the top 2 floors of the hotel.
And then it will carry on there?
Yeah. Then the after party.
No.
As the clips circulated, comment sections filled with questions rather than conclusions. Why hasn't Ellen addressed any of this? Why is her name barely mentioned in mainstream coverage? Is it because she's irrelevant now, or because she's still protected by her legacy? Online speculation suggests that people weren't looking for confessions. They were looking for acknowledgement. The silence raised questions precisely because Ellen had previously positioned herself as someone willing to confront uncomfortable topics. In past interviews, she challenged guests on moral grounds, questioned behavior, and presented herself as someone who drew lines. That history made her absence from the current conversation feel louder. It's important to pause here. No verified source has claimed Ellen knew about any crimes. No evidence places her at any wrongdoing. What exists is a perception gap. And perception gaps are where internet narratives grow. As Rogan pointed out, celebrity culture often rewards silence. Speaking invites risk. Silence preserves brand equity. But when silence appears selective, it becomes part of the story whether the person wants it to or not.
I do feel like you may not do that. You're neat though, right? I would imagine your closet is color coordinated. Everything is hung in a certain,
Yes.
right? So you're neat, it's just that you're not the person that puts it back. All right.
Rogan's point stays simple. If you were close enough to have him on your show multiple times, joke about the party culture on national TV.
This is how narratives form. Not through facts alone, but through patterns people think they see. Old jokes, new context. Familiar faces, sudden distance. And a public figure whose brand once centered on transparency now choosing quiet. By the end of that week, Ellen's name wasn't trending because of allegations. It was trending because of absence. And absence, in the digital age, rarely goes unnoticed. To understand why Ellen's silence carries so much weight, viewers began revisiting her past controversies, particularly the collapse of her public image following allegations of a toxic workplace environment. When those reports surfaced, they shattered the Be Kind brand that had defined her career for years. Former staff described intimidation, fear, and an environment where speaking up felt unsafe. Those claims were investigated, executive producers were removed, and Ellen issued a public apology. At the time, reactions were mixed. Some accepted her explanation that she was unaware of what was happening behind the scenes. Others felt the apology avoided responsibility. What mattered long-term wasn't the investigation itself, but the shift in perception. Trust cracked. And once trust cracks, people start re-examining everything. Online speculation suggests that this history is why Ellen's silence now feels suspicious to some viewers. Not because it proves anything about Diddy, but because it fits a pattern people already believe exists. A pattern of power, control, and carefully managed public messaging. Joe Rogan didn't accuse Ellen of hypocrisy outright, but he highlighted contrast. Years earlier, Ellen had openly questioned guests about moral behavior, including domestic violence issues involving other celebrities. She spoke firmly about protecting victims and setting examples. Those moments are now being replayed alongside the workplace scandal and the current silence, creating a narrative tension that fuels online debate. Viewers noticed the contrast between Ellen confronting others and avoiding commentary herself. Again, not illegal, not immoral by definition, but uncomfortable. The internet thrives on discomfort. As the conversation escalated, rumors began circulating, some extreme, some outright false. Claims about secret recordings, hidden warrants, and shadowy connections spread rapidly. Fact-checkers shut those stories down, but the damage was already done. The speed at which false claims traveled revealed something deeper, a public ready to believe the worst because trust had already eroded. This is where Rogan's commentary became significant. He repeatedly emphasized that speculation isn't evidence. He pushed back on extreme theories, even shutting down comparisons that went too far. But he also acknowledged why people were suspicious in the first place. When powerful figures remain silent during moments of cultural reckoning, audiences fill the void themselves. Another layer that intensified speculation was Ellen's decision to step away from television and later relocate abroad. Publicly, the move was framed as a lifestyle choice and political dissatisfaction. Online, however, timing became everything. People began connecting dots that may not belong together, but once a narrative forms, logic often takes a back seat. The internet doesn't wait for nuance. It rewards storylines that feel cinematic. Ellen's fall from grace, Diddy's legal troubles, Rogan's outsider commentary, and resurfaced clips combined into a single narrative arc that felt too compelling for many to ignore. Throughout all of this, Ellen remained quiet. No statement. No clarification. No acknowledgement. That choice may be strategic, legal, or personal. But perception doesn't care about intent. It reacts to absence. What makes this situation uniquely volatile is that nothing definitive has been proven about Ellen in relation to Diddy. The controversy exists almost entirely in the realm of optics. And optics, once damaged, are difficult to repair. The longer the silence continues, the more space the internet has to speculate. And as history shows, speculation rarely trends toward generosity. At its core, this controversy isn't about proving guilt. It's about how public figures are treated differently depending on influence, reputation, and timing. Joe Rogan's role in this narrative is less about exposing secrets and more about questioning systems. Who gets interrogated endlessly? Who gets handled gently? And why? Rogan framed the issue as a cultural imbalance rather than a conspiracy. He suggested that some celebrities are shielded not by innocence or guilt, but by relationships, brand value, and media comfort. Ellen, even after stepping away from television, remains a powerful name. And powerful names are often approached with caution. Viewers noticed that mainstream coverage largely avoided tying Ellen into the broader Diddy discussion, even as online conversations did the opposite. That disconnect fueled further suspicion. People began asking whether silence was self-imposed or socially enforced. The resurfacing of old jokes played a significant role in this shift. Humor relies on shared understanding. When that understanding changes, jokes become artifacts. What once sounded playful now sounds strange. Not incriminating, but revealing of how normalized certain conversations were. The internet also began analyzing Ellen's body language in past encounters where she avoided questions. Some interpreted discomfort as guilt. Others dismissed it as human reaction to confrontation. These interpretations say more about the audience than the subject, but they still drive engagement. A particularly telling moment came when comparisons veered into extreme territory, linking Ellen to unrelated conspiracies. Rogan shut those down, reinforcing that imagination doesn't equal reality. Yet even that correction highlighted how far distrust had spread. This is the danger of silence in the modern media ecosystem. When people don't hear from a subject, they don't pause. They project. They speculate. They connect dots whether or not they belong together. Ellen's Netflix special attempted to reclaim narrative control by reframing her fall as a product of fame's extremes. Some viewers saw honesty. Others saw deflection. That split remains unresolved and feeds into the current discourse. What emerges from all of this isn't a verdict, but a portrait of how reputation collapses in stages. First, credibility cracks. Then silence follows. Finally, perception takes over. Joe Rogan didn't say Ellen was guilty of anything. He didn't claim knowledge. He asked why silence feels unevenly applied. And once that question entered the public space, it became impossible to ignore. This story continues not because of evidence, but because of unresolved trust. And unresolved trust invites endless interpretation. In the end, Ellen may never address this. Legally, strategically, she doesn't have to. But culturally, silence has a cost. And that cost is being paid in speculation, not facts. The internet will move on eventually. It always does. But the imprint remains. Old clips don't disappear. Questions don't vanish. They wait. Now it's your turn to step back from the noise and look at the pattern, not the rumors. Do you think Ellen's silence is simply a smart legal move in a volatile moment, or do you understand why viewers feel unsettled by it? Is this the internet unfairly rewriting old jokes through a modern lens, or is it a necessary reevaluation of how celebrity culture normalized things it shouldn't have? There are no easy answers here, and that's what makes this story uncomfortable. If you believe public figures should address moments that shaped public perception, say why. If you think silence is being misread as guilt, explain your take. Keep the conversation grounded in facts, not theories. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you want more breakdowns that examine how power, silence, and reputation collide in celebrity culture, explore the other documentaries on this channel and stay part of the discussion.